So welcome everyone for the webinar. It's the most fundable time of the year. Plan smarter, invest strategically, and win bigger in 2026. I'm joined by my good friend and an industry expert, Steve. Steve, why don't you kick things off?
Great. Welcome, everybody. And I promise I won't sing the title of this webinar like Andy Williams does around the holidays. Good morning. My name is Steve Monahan, and I'm a co-founder and partner of Alacrity Partners. And I've spent the last 30 years helping financial institutions navigate technology-driven transformation. And for 20 of those years, I was with Gartner, where I helped banks and credit unions of various sizes plan, strategize, and execute transformation, as well as look at their technology economics in terms of technology spend used to run the credit union or the bank, as well as investment criteria. And we started, my partners and I started Alacrity Partners to take that experience and really focus on mid-market banks and credit unions. Because while you may not have the resources of the big banks, we think you have something more important and more powerful, and that's the role you play and the purpose you play in your communities. And we want to help you punch above your weight with technology, but never at the cost of humanity. Harsh?
Yes, so thank you, Steve. Hi, everyone. My name is Harshjot. I am the Executive Vice President at Solutions Metrix. I am on the execution side. So the way we work together is Steve is helping craft the roadmap, and we are working with Solutions Metrix, who has expertise and experience implementation and making that roadmap a reality. For the last 15 years, I have been focusing on consulting in the financial services space. I've had the privilege and honor of working with a lot of banks and credit unions and help them realize the value proposition that comes from a true transformation. I'm excited to join today, Steve, and walk us through the webinar, and hopefully we'll be able to provide you some insights as you start planning for next year.
Excellent. Let's jump in, Harsh.
Yes.
So our objective for this morning, as many of you are probably knee-deep in the 2026 budget planning season, is to give you an approach to consider that can help you think about ways to sustain transformation funding, especially in times of economic uncertainty. And I'm sure as you start to look at the line items in your budgets, you're asking yourselves, where can we continue with investment? Where do we maybe need to defer or pare back, and so forth? So we'll cover 3 topics this morning. We'll start with a call to action, and then we'll talk about the run the bank, change the bank imperative, and we'll close out with our thoughts on how to create a funding flywheel, ultimately to sustain transformation funding regardless of economic circumstances. So let's jump in, Harsh. And we can go right to the next slide. So if we think about the digital investment gap between the big banks and mid-market banks and credit unions, that digital investment gap continues to grow. And when I talk about digital investment, I'm talking about those investments in transformation above and beyond what you have to do to run the bank and the technology spend you have to keep the lights on. And if we look at a couple of different cohorts, banks between 10 billion and 50 billion, and then the top 4 US banks, there's a stark difference in the investment capacity. So for banks in 2024 between 10 and 50 billion, they had combined capacity of about $1.5 billion for digital investment above and beyond run the bank, based on our benchmarks and analysis. And the top 4 US banks, Wells, Citi, JP Morgan, Chase, Bank of America alone had about $16 billion in investment capacity. And if you think about the top 20 US banks, they're probably north of 30 billion combined. So clearly, the big banks have an investment capacity advantage over mid-market community banks and credit unions. And how does that investment capacity advantage manifest itself? Oh, go back one more. Go back.
Sorry.
If you can go back, Harsh. I'll tell you when to click.
Okay.
So if you think about how that investment capacity advantage manifests itself, it does in a few different ways. First of all, the big banks and the regional banks can make a lot of different big digital bets. Probably most importantly, they also can attract, hire, and retain the best talent to execute on their digital strategies. And certainly, they can make some bad bets and still have the wherewithal and capacity to continue along their digital transformation journey. We in the mid-market don't have that luxury. We have to make sure the bets that we make are impactful and will help us move the needle on our digital capabilities. And certainly we can't match the big banks dollar for dollar with their investment capacity. So what can we do? And I think the first question we have to ask ourselves as we think about this is, can we continue to make digital investments the way we always have? And for good reason, and because the market that the market provided us, the way we always have has been to perhaps buy point solutions to meet a specific digital opportunity, whether it's a specific loan origination system for a type of loan we want to offer, or perhaps it's some fintech relationship or other investment we make. The market in the past provided point solutions for that. And as you're looking at your budget planning and what it costs to maintain point solutions, perhaps you have a lot of on-premise applications, so forth, that's created a lot of sprawl, and it eats up a lot of your capacity to fund new initiatives and new digital investments. And so the good news is there's a paradigm shift in what's available in the market today. And that's moving from a point solution paradigm or mentality to a platform mentality. And what a platform helps you do, and the technology vendors exist today in various domains, is really continue to enhance that platform over time as new opportunities present themselves, or perhaps challenges present themselves. You can click on the next slide, Harsh. So if we think about, one second, if we think about the digital opportunities that are in front of us, there's a lot of them. And also with the disruption and the investments that the banking industry is making, but also the outside of our industry, the opportunities are endless, but also the expectations of our customers, members, and employees are increasing as well. And so, given the amount of investment that's being made, digital investment in many ways is like oxygen. Banks need it to survive, and there's certainly countless opportunities, whether it's around customer and employee experience. If you click again, security and fraud protection, click again, operational efficiency and scale, and certainly revenue protection and growth. The opportunities are endless, and where can we invest our precious investment dollars? The other area that many of you are probably dealing with is we need a way now to integrate all of these legacy point solutions and perhaps platforms that you're starting to implement or have implement. And certainly we need to leverage data and artificial intelligence as our ways of working change. And so given the investment capacity advantage the big banks have, how can we fund all of this, and what does the environment look like as we think about 2026? You can click on the next slide. So from our perspective, and perhaps yours as you look at 2026, digital investment capacity is at risk, and for a variety of reasons. You can go ahead and click. First of all, the The trade war continues. We have ebbs and flows, tariffs on, tariffs off. Certainly interest rates have been interesting. The Fed has penciled in a rate cut for their next meeting, but who knows what's going to happen, especially as the long tail of the tariffs start to impact businesses and our consumers more directly. Go ahead and click, Harsh. For those of you that have commercial lines of business, I'm sure as you talk to your clients, they're putting capital investment on hold, especially in this environment, and there's a greater focus on efficiency because they don't know what's going to happen, and they want to keep their powder dry. And I'm sure within the four walls of your institutions, you're also adopting the same posture as you think about investment in 26. Go ahead, Harsh. And certainly consumer sentiment has been down, especially as the impacts of the trade policy starts to directly hit their pocketbooks, and certainly consumer debt is up. And I'm sure there are other indicators you're looking at on your dashboards that are perhaps blinking red or yellow as you think about the investment side of 2026. Go ahead and click. So if we think about this risk to our digital investment capacity, it begs the question, how can we scale and sustain some level of investment capacity given the current economic climate? And to answer that, we'll look at the run change imperative. You can go ahead and click the next one. So banks and credit unions have two codependent operating imperatives. Go ahead and click. The first one is we got to continue to run the bank well. We have to continue to operate in a stable, efficient, and scalable manner, while at the same time, go ahead and click, we need to be changing the bank, given all of this, the disruption, given all of the new capabilities that are being introduced, given all of the expectations of our customers and our employees. We ultimately have to change the bank at the same time to secure our long-term viability. And so from a funding perspective, running the bank and running the bank well is our source of current advantage. And as we think about 2026 budget, it's our source of current investment capacity. Whereas change the bank is our source of future innovation and differentiation. So as we think about 2026 budget, how do we, look at both sides of the equation as we start to figure out our investment capacity and transformation capacity for 2026? So let's start with the run the bank side, since that's the source of our current investment capacity. And given the focus on efficiency, many of you are probably and have probably been looking at where are there efficiency opportunities within our technology spend, but also I'm sure across our non-interest expense as a whole. And as we think about technology spend optimization, we think about finding areas of opportunity in terms of four levers that we recommend folks continuously pull on. It's not a once and done project. So let me walk through the four levers to optimize run. Go ahead, Harsh. So the first lever is optimize, and this is about how do we optimize our current vendor relationships and contracts. And I'd say that all of our clients that we talk to and are working with are pulling on this lever. And certainly, given the investment in vendor management capabilities we're seeing over the past couple of years, it's top of mind, and certainly third-party risk requirements with your regulators are important. So optimizing is important, and it's more than just making sure that you're getting a good deal, or at renewal time your capping increases or SLAs are being met. Those are very important and certainly need to be monitored, but also it's about how, especially for our strategic vendors, how well do we work with them? Is there cultural fit? Are they able to help us with innovation? Because oftentimes we rely on a couple of vendors, our core vendors and others, to really help us innovate and move the needle on our digital capabilities. Second, you can go ahead and click. The second lever is rationalize. And this is about rationalizing continuously our business application and technology portfolio. As we talked about earlier, perhaps you have a lot of point solutions and technology debt has accrued. Rationalization is about how do we look for opportunities to either retire or eliminate redundant solutions or other areas where we can reduce technology debt. And I'd say that probably half of our clients that we work with are either about to start this exercise or are in flight, and it's certainly a very important lever to pull. Go ahead, Harsh.
Sorry.
The next lever is automation, and certainly automation is important as we seek to scale our institutions, our business processes, and our IT processes, hopefully without necessarily adding additional headcount. And I'll let Harsh share some examples of what he's seeing here in the automate lever.
Yes, thank you, Steve. So when we talk about automation, obviously, we're talking about processes that can be automated, that can be reduced from a manual intervention. But in specific scenarios of financial institutions, what we've come across is things that come top of the mind are optimizing member and customer journeys. This could be related to onboarding. This could be related to personalized engagement. This could be enhancing the 360-degree view of members so we can connect with them better. Rather than having to do these manually, there's automation has helped businesses drive better results. Then when we switch our focus on lending and credit processes, there's a few processes there, especially around automated loan workflows from application intake, document collection, credit scoring, underwriting, disbursement. We've seen automation play a key role in enabling those processes to become more streamlined, more efficient, and also more standardized. When we go into the operations piece, then driving efficiency becomes important, which means we can address and empower our people to be able to serve better customers, serve more members, and so on and so forth. There, repetitive back office tasks, for example, things around data entry, document verification, compliance checks, could be something that can be automated with workflows. Case management, routing all the service requests in a centralized manner, giving self-serve capabilities to our customers. Those are as well things where you can save precious time and become more independent and automate those things. Last but not least is empowering the staff productivity. When we talk about guided selling and service scripts, having low-code, no-code tools, enabling better collaboration tied to Member 360, those can provide your employees with information faster, at their fingertips, and in a more holistic manner to be able to serve the customers better. So putting all these automated levers at different parts of the organization and more into the core processes can save valuable time and provide you that oxygen that Steve was talking about to be able to run the bank better.
Well said. Thanks, Harsh. And let's talk about the fourth lever, which is reimagining. And this is about accelerating value and thinking about operating model changes. Harsh, give us your thoughts there.
Yes. So first, let's talk a little bit about Reimagine. So once a bank or a financial institution has gone through optimization, rationalization, and automation, it's basically essentially streamlined the cost, removed inefficiencies, and digitized repeated workflows. But sustaining the funding flywheel, continuously generating capacity to reinvest in innovation, requires it to go just beyond operational capacity, but into reimagining the business model ecosystem. So when we go into details of what that looks like, we're talking about a few things. First is from process efficiency, which we've already accomplished, it moves into business model reinvention. What do we mean by that? We're talking about concepts like banking as a service, outcome-based services, then task-based services, embedded financing models. From technology enabled, it moves to data-driven intelligence. Now, you're not just using technology to enable yourself, but you're using data that comes from intelligent sources to build AI operating models, data monetization, personalization at scales. And then when you think about products, now, as Steve mentioned, from a point source, point solution systems, you will be able to move to platforms and ecosystems where you're building digital platforms that connect members with each other and their partners. So you're basically building an ecosystem, for lack of a better word, saying the Ubers of the world, the Amazons of the world. As a bank, if you're able to build ecosystem of partnerships, of economics, of membership communities, it helps you sustain and identify capital opportunities that may not be existing. Last but not least, from a cost-focused model, you move to a growth flywheel model. What does that mean? You're focusing on the reinvestment loop. You're focusing as agility as currency because time is money. And last but not least, which is extremely important, sustainability and ESG. So banking aligned with green finance and impacting investment sustains trust, and it will open access to ESG capital markets. So as you reimagine the business model, now you'll be able to truly optimize those levers to run the bank properly.
Awesome. Thanks, Harsh. And I want to point out something that perhaps you picked up on, but as we walked through each of the levers, I'll call it the lever stack, you may have noticed on the left-hand side, the blue rectangle increased to reflect increasing investment capacity potential or incremental capacity potential. And certainly as you start to pull on more of the levers, the opportunity for new investment capacity increases. But I'd be remiss, and we would be remiss, to say that on the right, you'd notice the complexity of executing on those levers also increases as you start to pull on more of them. So it's to say, it takes work, it takes effort. In some cases, organizational change management is going to be really important as you get stakeholders involved in terms of rationalizing cherished applications, or certainly where automation comes into play and where reimagining. But in the environment we work in and the rapid pace of change, it's really important to think about these four levers. And as you look at your assumptions, and when your CFO comes back and says, hey, I need 10% more on run, you can use this framework to start to identify those opportunity areas. Harsh gave a sneak preview about the funding flywheel. So let's talk about the other side of the equation, the change side. And this is the funding flywheel. So we have said a couple of times this morning that run optimization has to be continuous. It's not a once and done cost cutting exercise. It really needs to become an operating and management discipline to continuously sustain change investments. So what does that look like? And for many of you, as I talked about before, you're probably pulling on some or all of these levers. Others maybe just getting started as you think about 2026 and winding down 2025. And for those of you that are just getting started or maybe early in your journey, we like to think about run optimization in terms of rounds of optimization. It's unlikely for those of you that are just getting started that you're going to pull on all four of those levers at the outset. What we typically see in I'll call it the round one of run optimization is some kind of event or events that enable you to pull on a couple of levers. And the common ones we see are optimize and rationalize. And the common events we see related to those levers are, you may have a big vendor renewal coming up and you have an opportunity to optimize that contract. On the rationalize side, you might have a point solution or set of point solutions that are being sunset, or perhaps the vendor is investing in a new version of their solution and they want you to come off the legacy solution because they're not going to support it for much longer. Those are typical events that lead to these levers. A great example of one of our clients that was able to pull on these levers and start their first round of optimization was around their contact center infrastructure. They had a legacy contact solution and a variety of ancillary solutions that they had to use and maintain to provide the full breadth of functionality they needed, both from the contact center employees as well as the workforce management and scheduling and so forth. And with their new platform, they're going to be able to retire 7+ ancillary solutions. So once we've got that first round and we start to execute on that first round of optimization, what do we do with that, what I'll call the optimization dividend? Go ahead and click. And so the key is to, thoughtfully earmark and deploy, we'll call it that first 10% of optimization. You may have to flow some of that savings back to the bottom line, but it's really important to earmark and deploy some portion of that first round of optimization to get the flywheel up and running. Go ahead and click the next button. So as we earmark and deploy, one more time, as we earmark and deploy that first round of optimization dividend, we can start to think about some new digital initiatives that we may be able to self-fund a portion of because of that optimization. Oftentimes, we see foundational investments, digital investments in a couple of areas based on what people learn and what they experience through keeping the lights on and so forth. And the first one is oftentimes an enterprise integration platform, because they realize we need to get better at connecting all of the legacy estate we have, as well as the platforms. We may have fintech partners and certainly ecosystem partners that it's just a real grind to be able to connect and share data. So often a foundational investment is put toward an integration platform, an enterprise integration platform. A second area we see, and Harsh alluded to this a minute ago, is really looking at what we call at Alacrity an experience hub. It's about CRM, but also more broadly process management and process orchestration capabilities. And it's because we want to provide not only our customers, but our employees a better experience. So as you start to feed the flywheel and perhaps stand up some of those foundational investments, go ahead and click, you can see that the flywheel starts to move, and you realize, okay, I can do another round of optimization now because I have these foundational investments in place. So go ahead and click. So round 2 might be, because we've got a process orchestration and better integration, we might be able to not only optimize, rationalize, and now we can automate. Now we can start to eliminate manual choke points in our customer journeys and the value streams we offer them. We might be able to retire a couple of applications that our contact center people have to swivel and log into as they're trying to service our customers, our members. And that creates another round of investment capacity. And perhaps round 3, now we're starting to reimagine. So you can get the drift that as we continue to optimize, invest in digital investment, it creates more opportunities for optimization, more opportunities for new digital investment. And as clients that are in the later rounds of optimization quickly realize, go ahead and click, to sustain the flywheel requires them to transform. And I'll let Harsh talk about what we see there and why that's the case.
Yeah, so when we talk about transformation, sometimes what we've heard from institutions is they are looking at transformation as a start and stop, right? A journey, not as a journey, but as a destination. But to sustain this flywheel, we have to continuously keep transforming our business to be able to meet the needs of the current industry and the landscape. So what does transformation do for you? It obviously ensures that the flywheel will not lose momentum by continuously optimizing costs, continuously expanding revenue opportunities, managing risks, scaling operations. Without transformation, where you end up is banks will risk stalling in a competitive and capital-intensive market, which will again make your funding flywheel suffer. So what this basically does is it will ensure that every dollar invested And we're not talking about the cost, we're talking about investments in optimization and innovation will yield measurable returns. So through your ROI analysis, you can look at lower costs, higher revenue, and improved customer experience. These returns that you get are now reinvested, compounding the flywheel momentum and allowing banks to obviously expand loan portfolios and market share sustainability. So transformation is what is going to feed your flywheel. Flywheel is what's going to provide you additional capital to feed the transformation. If any part of this flywheel suffers, then the transformation or the consequently funding flywheel is going to be extremely impacted.
One last comment on the flywheel in the spirit of the budget season we're in, and for the benefit of your chief financial officers, we've hopefully hit home the need for continuously doing the optimization and the investment. And there's a couple of practical reasons to do that I just want to underscore. The first one, as we all know, when we're making digital investments, many of the platforms that we're putting in place to support our digital journeys are cloud-based. Therefore, our cost profile is shifting from a kind of more CapEx, OpEx split to more of an OpEx split. So certainly optimizing run as we transition to more cloud-based platforms and infrastructure is important, if nothing else, to smooth out the impact to the income statement, especially for those of you that are publicly traded community banks and mid-market banks and have to report out to the analysts on a quarterly basis. The second reason why it's important to manage both sides of the equation, run optimization and change investment at the same time and continuously, is there's an old saying, a mentor of mine said, today's change investment or digital investment is tomorrow's run. So if we're not making room in run for that change investment as it transitions to run, our spend and technology and more broadly is going to increase at perhaps unsustainable rates. So that's, if nothing else, as you're thinking about budgets, that's a reason to consider this a discipline and not kind of one-time exercises. So where do we, for those of you that are, perhaps starting round one or in round one, what do we recommend as getting the first round of optimization going? Harsh, next slide. So think about round one, as we talked about, as seeding and feeding. I talked about common events around kind of optimization and rationalization and common areas where people invest that first round of optimization dividend. But what else should you be doing as you start up round one? Go ahead and click, Harsh. It's important, as we all know, to have a baseline. We need to understand when we're starting this optimization discipline and rounds of optimization and digital investment, to understand where we're starting from a run perspective, spend, and also from a change perspective, because we don't manage what we don't see, and we need to understand where are there potential opportunities. We need to understand what portion of our current spend profile is for running the bank or credit union versus changing the bank or credit union. According to Gartner, about, from a banking industry perspective as a whole, about 70% of overall spend is for run the bank. We benchmark with a lot of clients, and some are lower than that, some are than higher, but you have to understand where you're starting from so you can identify opportunities and track progress. The second area to think about as you're getting round one underway and starting up the flywheel, and I talked about this earlier in terms of moving away from a point solution paradigm to a platform paradigm, is thinking about how do we become a more adaptable organization. And by adaptability and business adaptability specifically, that means how do we position ourselves to be adaptable, to respond to opportunities more quickly, how to respond to threats more quickly. I think a great example of business adaptability that we all lived through, and it's hard to believe it's 5 years ago, is Paycheck Protection Program in COVID. In February and early March of 2020, we had no idea that was coming or that opportunity was coming, but we certainly knew by the end of March that we needed to stand up something quickly with PPP in order to support our community and the small businesses and businesses in our community. So that's business adaptability, and that's going to become more prevalent, and that speed with which we were able to roll out PPP is going to become paramount. And for some of us, it was really painful. For others, it may have been a little painful, but there are technologies and platforms and architectures to consider that help us be adaptable. And we have a webinar in September that's going to unpack this one in more detail. So hopefully you can join us for that one. Go ahead, Harsh. The other piece that we ask folks or recommend folks be conscious of, and we talked a little bit about integration, is as you're getting the flywheel up and running, there's probably some targeted technology modernization you're going to have to do along the way. I talked about integration earlier, but what are the kind of showstopper technology debt that's going to inhibit you from speeding up the flywheel and needs to be addressed? For some of you, it might actually be your core banking system. I'm having more and more conversations with folks that are contemplating or being forced to, upgrade or switch core providers because they've hit the end of what that can do. So there are certainly techniques and approaches with integration, with adaptability, where you can de-risk if you have to do a core conversion, but plan for some degree of targeted technology modernization. And finally, as you've probably picked up, as you think about the rounds of optimization and where you're going to earmark and deploy that dividend, thinking about your roadmap in terms of run optimization and change investment together is really important. It's important because you need to understand dependencies, you need to understand sequencing, you need to understand when do I need to do targeted technology modernization, or where are there opportunities for me to leapfrog by moving to a more platform-based architecture so that we can continue our journey ultimately to be an adaptable business, to punch above our weight as we face big banks that have almost unlimited capital to invest. So we'll close out with a few takeaways that I'm sure you can predict what they are. But the first one is, as we saw, that investment gap continues to grow. And again, we're not going to match dollar for dollar, but we have to rethink the way we think about technology, the way we think about our digital investments. And we have to continuously, next click, look at the run change dynamic and that interplay, because they are codependent operating imperatives. And finally, to just hit it over the head again, managing that run change dynamic is continuous. We'll go to questions in a second, but one more information. As I mentioned, we have a couple of upcoming webinars. You can snap on the QC codes. We have the adaptability one I talked about on Thursday, September 18th. And then for those of you that are in the midst of transformation or thinking about transformation, there's a great one we're going to do in October, on October 17th, around a transformation gut check. Harsh, I think we have a few minutes for questions.
Yes. So, Steve, we have a few questions coming in. If you'd be kind enough to talk about the first one that I see on my screen is, what KPIs should executives track to know if their flywheel is accelerating or slowing down?
Yeah, it's a great question. I think at a macro level, you'll want to look at kind of some of the key ratios that folks often look at. What is our run versus change split? Are we starting to see more investment capacity versus in terms of the percentage of dollars we have to spend on run versus investment capacity? So that's one. The second set of kind of higher level metrics are keeping an eye on our IT, our technology spend as a percentage of revenue versus tech spend as a percentage of non-interest expense. As we start to make more digital investments that are revenue focused, they're helping us either protect revenue or grow revenue, we'll expect to see that ratio of tech spend to revenue, that percentage, get lower because we're driving more revenue. So we want to see that spread. Whereas if we're using the flywheel to perhaps scale better and be more efficient, we'll expect to see tech spend as a percentage of non-interest expense actually increase because we're leveraging technology more to help with our operations. So that spread between tech spend as a percentage of non-interest expense and tech spend as a percentage of revenue should be growing. That's kind of at the macro level. At a kind of initiative and business case level, I often recommend let's look at the levers and use that as a framework to start to map out what business value are we going to get. Are we reducing application footprint? Are we reducing our run costs? Are we using automation for more throughput? Perhaps we're able to drive more origination and loan origination, or drive more deposit traffic. So those are some of the techniques to kind of look at and see, is the flywheel really helping us with business impact?
Thank you, Steve. Steve, I guess we have time for just one last quick question that we received. Somebody's asking, in what ways could a leadership culture enable or obstruct the momentum of the funding flywheel, or if you've seen scenarios where that may have been something that our audience can take in as an example?
It's a great question, and it's that to me is it's non-negotiable. Like, executive sponsorship and leadership is really important. Not just to say, yeah, it's important to optimize and feed the flywheel, but as we talked about earlier, the way that folks are realizing they have to sustain the flywheel is through some degree of transformation. And a big component of transformation success is leadership support, but also organizational change management. And looking at your culture of your institution is going to drive a lot of how you do the flywheel, how you execute run optimization. And without executive support, and especially as you get into more innovative things in the reimagining and testing and learning, that executive support and leadership and organizational change management is critical. And the ones that are getting the flywheel really humming are the ones that have an executive team that are behind it. They support the investment. They recognize some things are going to be learned and some things are going to be perhaps done in a way that's suboptimal, but they adapt and move on, and that support is critical.
Well, thank you, Steve, for such wonderful insights and knowledge. I hope our audience gained some insights and found the webinar valuable. Like Steve said, we are doing a couple of more webinars, so we'd be very happy to share other insights and knowledge from that. With that, I would like to thank everyone who took out time from their busy schedule to sit with us and discuss this. And we'll be looking forward to seeing you for the next webinar. Thank you, Steve, and thank you, everyone.
Have a great day and a great weekend, everybody.
Thank you.